After ministers were scolded by the Speaker of the Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, he was very cross, wasn't he, for announcing budget decisions early this week, all these leaks to the media. Chancellor Rishi Sunak will finally deliver the official budget in Parliament later today. We know he's going to be offering a rise in the minimum wage, a pay rise for public sector workers and squillions more for the NHS.
But is it enough to help working families through what could be a very difficult winter ahead? Joining us now to discuss this is Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Bridget Phillipson. Very good morning to you. Nice to have you on the show this morning. I suppose, you know, the flagship sort of headline, I mean, there's been a lot of them, haven't there, is, of course, the rise in the national minimum wage. Now, it's going up by 59 pence to £9.50. Labour's stance, which was a bit of a U-turn on Keir Starmer's part and led to somebody resigning during the conference, was to roll back from £15 an hour and put it at £10 an hour. It doesn't really give Labour much wriggle room, does it, to wave the flag and say, listen, Labour is the party of working families?
Well, Labour believes in the need for a high-skill, high-wage economy. We're committed to £10 an hour per hour of the minimum wage. But what we also need to see is a much longer-term plan from the government in responding to some of those big challenges that we face in the economy. But families are really feeling the pinch at the moment, and that's why we've also set out a plan to cut VAT on heating bills, because as those gas and electricity bills are dropping onto people's mats, we know that they're facing big price increases. The weekly shop is more expensive too. You go to the petrol station, you fill up your car, and the same is true there. So those pressures are there. We need to see action from the government right now to help families.
Well, I promise you we're going to come on to what Labour would do if it was your budget today. We've got about 4 or 5 points we want to put to you, so I promise you we'll come on to that. But let's not just brush aside what Ranveer said. It's not a good look, is it, for your leader to basically be prancing around with the McDonald's protesters a few months ago and saying, yes, £15, we're all going for 15 quid, they're right, I'm right behind them, and then quietly a few months later saying, well, no, actually, 10 will do it. It's just not a good look, is it?
£10 an hour is the position that we've had for some time, but I think, you know, what you'll see in the Labour Party is that we're arguing about how we can raise living standards. The Conservatives, however, are making life a lot harder for working families. So that's the difference that you see. I mean, I'm happy to have a discussion with the government about how we ease those pressures on families, because they are very real and they are there. But we absolutely believe in the need for a high-wage economy. That's what Labour is all about, and that's why we've always been the party of working people.
All right, well, let's go through it point by point. Let's make it quite snappy, because we're a bit short of time this morning. There's so much to get in the programme. You cut VAT on domestic energy bills if it was your budget today, but by what? How far would you cut them?
We'd cut it from 5% to 0 for 6 months, so that would deal with all of the immediate pressures that families are facing right now, because we know it's really tough at the moment.
You cut and then scrap business rates?
We would freeze them for all firms, cut them for smaller firms, and then totally overhaul the system. It's not fit for the modern world. It's the number one concern that businesses raise with me, and we need to level that playing field between the online giants and our high street firms.
And how would you fill the hole in the Treasury's coffers from doing that?
We've said that we would, in the short term, increase the digital services tax, which is drawn from those big online giants. And in the longer term, the changes that we're seeing around corporation tax will fill that.
Would there be a wealth tax?
We've set out the need to reform the tax system, so we believe we should be taxing fairly. In our economy, we need a modern tax system. It hasn't kept pace with the changes that we've seen in our economy, but we've also set out...
That's a bit general. What do you mean? How would a wealth tax work?
Well, we'll set out in full detail what we're saying ahead of the next election. But to give you some examples of what we believe the government should be doing now, is we would take away charitable status for private schools and put that money into giving all children in every part of our country the best possible start in life. We would close loopholes where it comes to private equity, where, again, changes haven't kept pace with the economy. So we've set out a very different kind of direction on the approach that we would take on tax, rather than the government, who, of course, are hammering working families with increases in national insurance. We've seen council tax go up, income tax thresholds have been frozen, universal credit.
The social care gap then, because, I mean, for many people, you know, this rise in national insurance to pay for social care next year, it's across the board, it hits everybody, if you like, everybody shares that burden, and many are saying, of course, some of the poorest will share, you know, take the heaviest load of that. But it is an issue, isn't it? Because we have an ageing population and that has to be sorted out. What is Labour's plan then to pay for social care?
We don't think it's right that again and again the government goes to working people first, and that's what they've done with social care. I think the trouble with what they've put forward is that it doesn't actually represent a plan for social care. There's no guarantee that any of that money is ever going to reach social care. We also need to do a lot more just to change the whole system as it currently stands. Lots of people who need support to live in...
If it's not to raise money through tax?
Well, it's to raise money in different ways. I mean, also to grow the economy. We've seen terrible growth over the last 10 years, and it's not clear that we're going to see the growth that we need. So you grow your economy, but also you have different priorities around taxation. And we've set out a whole host of different priorities. Of course, the government have wasted vast sums of money on test and trace that didn't properly work, on PPE contracts that didn't deliver. I mean, maybe they might have a bit more to spend.
And the vaccines have gone really well. So I think the problem for Labour is that a lot of people will owe their jobs, and the fact that for the last few, months during furlough, they were actually able to live on 80% of their salary, and also that the vaccine rollout has ultimately gone well. In terms of trying to make inroads, Labour's left with little wriggle room.
Well, we've set out what we should be doing right now to help families and businesses. Also, that cut to business rates to get businesses through this tough time. But in the longer term, we do need to buy, make and sell more here in Britain. We also need to respond to climate change. And I believe that involves creating lots of well-paid, highly skilled jobs in every corner of our country, in making that change to a different kind of economy and different kind of society.
Much like Brexit, and that's what we've got.
Listen, property prices are going through the roof at the moment. A lot of profits being made by people selling high, having bought low. Would you introduce a mansion tax?
That's not something that we're looking at. I mean, what we have said, however, is that it was wrong for the government to bring in a stamp duty holiday that also included second homeowners and buy-to-let landlords. That cost billions of pounds. That isn't something that we would have done. I mean, politics is about priorities. It's who you seek to support, why you seek to do that, and the importance that you attach to it. And for me, at a point at which life's pretty hard for a lot of families and they're really feeling the squeeze, we would prioritise dealing with that cost of living challenge facing so many families and businesses in our country, and we wouldn't have been giving over money to people who frankly didn't need it in the first place. And our principle is that those with the broader shoulders should be asked to contribute a little more. We think that's right.
Well, in that case, last question, what would be the top rate of income tax under a Labour government?
We are not actively considering changing income tax. It's not something we're looking at right now. That's not on our agenda. OK, that's crystal. Thank you very much indeed. Will you be wearing a mask today, by the way, for the budget? Yes, I will. I always wear a mask in the House of Commons chamber unless I'm speaking.
Do you think the whole of the Tory front bench should be wearing masks as well?
I hope so. I think it would send the right signal to the country. I think we have to lead by example as members of Parliament.
I guess Ricky could drink his whiskey through a straw, couldn't he?
Rishi, yeah, sorry. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme.